So Luxury, today we're talking about a track that isn't just a song, but a declaration of desire, freedom, and self-expression.
That's right, Diallo. With its Prince-worthy grooves, it marked a turning point for Janelle Monáe, revealing a more playful, unapologetically sensual side of her artistry.
That's right. We're talking one song, and that song is Make Me Feel by Janelle Monáe.
There's nothing better. That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way you make me feel.
I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ Diallo Riddle.
And I'm producer, DJ, songwriter, and musicologist Luxury, aka the guy who whispers,
Interpolation.
And this is one song.
the show where we break down the stems and stories behind iconic songs across genres and tell you why they deserve one more listen.
You will hear these songs like you've never heard them before, and you can watch one song on YouTube and Spotify. While you're there, please like and subscribe. So today we're covering Janelle Monáe's Make Me Feel, which came out in 2018, but this year the song had a resurgence when a remix of the song was used as the theme for the 7th season of Love Island USA. Let's hear a bit of the EDX Dubai Skyline remix.
That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way you make me feel.
I'm raising the roof.
So real.
Man, that takes me back to a time not too long ago when all we ever saw was, very attractive people cooking breakfast and talking about who they wanted to hook up with.
Are you saying that you watched
I do.
all 7 seasons of Love Island?
Not all 7 seasons,
Okay.
my friend, but the last 2 have been kind of appointment.
I've never watched
Junk
it. Am
TV
I
for
missing
me.
out on something? What am I missing out on?
Man, I feel so. Listen, I am not ashamed. I do watch some reality shows,
Yeah,
and
sure.
Love Island in the summertime, like they kind of go well together.
Okay, well, I'll give it a shot on your recommendation.
I feel like this can only end badly for me and your trust of me. Here's what I found interesting. I knew the song.
Yeah.
I even knew that this was a remix that I had spun out on gigs, but I had to Shazam it. I had to try and figure out what was this song, who sang this? And I was so surprised when it came up as Janelle Monáe because I consider myself a Janelle Monáe fan. She's one of those artists who I feel like, has such a distinct look, but it's really hard sometimes to pin down her sound.
Right. Good point. Right.
And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that she wears her artist card on her sleeve. She changes her vocal arrangements. Like think about a song like Pink, P-Y-N-K, Pink. On that song, she sounds not quite like the person you hear on Make Me Feel.
Pink like the inside of your baby. Pink behind all of the doors.
And the first time I ever heard her voice, I thought she was sort of like female James Brown. The first time I heard it was
Totally.
on
Yeah,
Tightrope,
yeah.
which features Big Boy from Outkast.
Yep.
Great song. Let's hear a little bit of that.
Allow it, 'cause baby, whether you're high or low, or whether you're high or low, you got to chip on the tightrope.
Definite Pharrell happy vibes going on there. And not to mention James Brown.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like that could be 3 different singers singing those 3
In
different
3 different
songs.
eras, by the way. Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this episode is because I wanted to give Janelle her flowers and say, hey, we see you like wearing these different, I don't want to call them masks because that sounds pejorative, but like, wearing these different styles. Like she can come in so many different ways.
I like the way you put that she's wearing the style. She literally is.
Yeah.
And part of her whole artistic thing is that her artistry includes the multimedia element.
Yeah.
It's music, it's video, it's performance, it's clothes.
Yeah.
Big part of her look is her look. Big part of her artistry is her look.
And her clothes and even her look has changed over
Many
time. It's
times,
not
yeah.
that she stays static. It's not that she's even can be pigeonholed into one sound. And maybe that's been to her detriment because to a certain extent, a Janelle Monáe song can sound like a lot of different things.
Right.
And so that keeps her interesting, but it can also make it where a person like me who likes Janelle Monáe and likes one of her songs forgets that was a Janelle Monáe song.
I think you're nailing it. And part of why we're doing this episode in many ways is because she is an artist that we think in this moment is extremely important.
Right.
And who deserves her flowers. And this song is incredible and we
Totally.
love it. But you may have missed it. She may have slipped under your radar or you may have been aware of her peripherally. One good example of that. It's easy to forget that she's like featured in the fun song We Are Young. That song is called We Are Young featuring Janelle Monáe.
Totally. And by the way, I think that her cosign was one of the reasons I first picked that song up. Like, oh, well, Janelle says these guys are cool.
Yeah.
I think,
Oh, right. Good
look,
point.
when we do the show, there are plenty of times where we're doing it about an artist, Stevie Wonder, Ozzy Osbourne, like so much of their story has already happened
Right.
that it's very clear.
They've had decades
what
to
the-
establish their artistry,
Exactly.
right?
It's clear to like, here's the song you've heard so many times, and here's the legacy that we're all sort of agreed is gonna, this is a different kind of episode in the sense that this is an artist whose legacy is still being painted
That's right.
every day. So that's one of the reasons we're excited to do this episode.
It's crazy that she's had 10 Grammy nominations, but she's never had a Billboard Hot 100.
That was a crazy stat
It's
when I heard
crazy,
that.
right? Except technically,
Yeah.
this one went to number 99, right? But barely. She barely cracked it.
Yeah.
And actually, on another technicality, another double asterisk would be that "Fun We Are Young" went to number 1,
Which
so
is-
she's on a number 1
Yes.
song.
Yes, it's not one of her solo
But it's not
songs,
one
but
of her
she is
solo
technically
songs.
on that song. That's
Exactly.
correct.
And another thing that we're excited to talk about is how both as an artist, but even in the song, there's a lot of ambiguity, wonderful ambiguity. It's gender fluidity and it's genre fluidity. And it's maybe no surprise that she cites as two of her biggest influences, Prince and David Bowie.
Yeah.
Two of the godfathers, if you will, or godparents, if you will, of genre bending and gender bending, for the past 40 years
The
in
fluidity.
pop music. Right, the fluidity
Yeah.
of it all, right. So let's listen to a bit of Janelle Monáe's favorite David Bowie song. This is Moon Age Daydream.
Press your space, no my love. Freak out in a moon age daydream, oh yeah.
I'm feeling the sadness of losing. I mean, it's crazy that in 2016 we lost both of them,
Man,
right?
2016
Prince
sucks.
and Bowie just 3
to
or
this
4
day,
months
that
apart.
might be one of the worst years ever.
Yeah, it is
God
for
damn.
many reasons. And these two important people in my life that I never knew. It makes me
Yeah.
sad to think of them being gone, being lost.
I mean, I think with Bowie,
soon.
I don't know at what age Bowie died, but people from the 60s, people who had success in the 60s tend to die. you
Yeah.
know, like,
I know. We need to
just-
get used to it, but it's still
but
hard.
Prince, I just always felt like I did not see that coming.
Right.
And it bums me out to this day. But speaking of Bowie's influence, can we talk about her world building, which definitely leans into sci-fi themes and aesthetics? There's some Afrofuturism going on there. For Dirty Computer, she released a companion film that tells the story of an android who's living in a dystopian future under a totalitarian regime that wants to get rid of the world of so-called dirty computers. Let's watch a clip where her character is captured to be cleaned.
Twice in hell,
Uncle Sam.
kissed a man. They call this place the House of the New Dawn. This place where they drained us of our dirt and all the things that made us special.
I mean, this is why I'm so glad we're doing this episode, because I feel like in some ways her brain is how my brain works. Like there's sometimes like, oh, I want to like direct a movie, or sometimes I'm like, oh, I just want to write a show. And there's sometimes I just want to show up as an actor, get the script, and then just go. And the script will be my guide. Like
Yeah.
there, she's got so many ideas and
Right.
so many feels and interests. And even that music at the end that sounded sort of synth wavy, like amazing.
I love that you're saying this because it really, absolutely, there's some artists that the core of their artistry is the idea, and the execution of it could be musical, could be
Yeah.
lyrical, musically, could be musical, musically, could be visual, could be storytelling in a film form. But I think that there are also musicians who are just incredible drummers, and they have other ideas, but like that is their artistry. It's all in how they hit the skins.
Yeah.
And there's everything in between, of course. And Janelle Monáe really does stand out. Maybe in all of our episodes, we've had everything on that spectrum, but she's with the Bowies of the world, and maybe the Lady Gagas to a certain degree.
Yes.
Where expression comes in many forms, including music, and importantly music, but not only in music.
Not only in music. We talked a little bit about Bowie already, but another one of her musical heroes was actually a mentor to her, and we're talking about Prince. He was a big supporter of her really early on. In 2010, when the BET Awards had a Prince tribute, he handpicked Janelle to perform Let's Go Crazy. Let's watch a bit of her performance.
Oh no, let's go crazy. Let's get nuts. Look for the purple banana till they put us
Can I
in.
say something about Let's Go Crazy? There's something so infectious about the BPM and
Yeah.
the arrangement that I couldn't even watch that without like moving my foot
Yeah.
in time to the beat. And I even woke up this morning ironically thinking about how lucky I am to have been alive when that song came out. Because can you imagine a pop song that starts off with essentially like, it's not a prayer, it's
Right.
not a sir. He says, "Dearly beloved." It almost sounds like the officiant at a wedding or something like that. But like, that's how the song starts.
Right. And it was a big radio hit.
And it was a huge
30
radio hit.
seconds of wobbly organ.
Yes. And then when the drum beat comes in, when he starts talking about the
Elevator
shrink at
gonna
Beverly
break you
Hills.
down.
Well,
Yeah,
specifically
right.
says, we call that shrink at Beverly Hills.
You
You know
know
the
the
one.
Dr. Everything will be all
Be all
right.
right. Like, how did that song ever become a radio hit? It breaks so
Incredible.
many rules.
It's so incredible. What an incredible song. And so cute to watch him in the audience
I
watching
know.
her with a little smirk on his face.
with a little smirk and
So
also like
adorable.
I don't know if you caught it, like it almost felt like, like a parent sort of like,
Yeah.
"Oh, she's doing
Proud.
so good. She's
Right.
doing so
in the 8th grade play or something.
Yes.
Absolutely. I
You
was
kind of
getting
want
those
him to
vibes
like
too.
be like mouthy the words. But great clip. I love that clip.
Yeah. Or I'm picturing him with like his hands up here, like little
I
clapping.
mean, that's basically his vibe.
high
His face,
clap. Yeah.
his face has this vibe.
So Prince worked with Janelle on a track on her second album, Electric Lady, called Giving Them What They Love. He played guitar, bass, and also sang on the track. So let's hear a little bit of it.
I am sharper than a switchblade, first and last of one.
There he is.
Lady, that's the truth.
If I can just say something quickly about this. So what just immediately springs to mind is obviously that's Prince.
Yeah.
Distinctive falsetto. But we just did, interestingly, an episode about Sylvester
Yep.
and about falsetto and a song called, by the way, You Make Me Feel, coincidentally, and sexuality, right? Interesting parallels between the
Yeah.
two of them. Maybe not fully coincidental, but specifically here with the falsetto. On that episode, it was funny because some of the clips of the episode had us doing the falsetto with Stevie Mackey.
Yeah.
And at certain points, a listener or two, there was a moment of overlap basically where we'd be playing Sylvester's vocal and then there'd be you maybe or maybe me. Like 2 or 3 of us were doing falsetto. And to a certain degree, it was a little indistinguishable momentarily, but I knew immediately that that was Prince's falsetto.
Mm-hmm.
Falsetto is really difficult to get personality into because you are losing a huge percentage of what goes into making
Yeah.
the sound. You're eliminating that. You're just getting to the high breathiness of it all. But I knew that was Prince.
Yeah.
One note of his falsetto was so distinctive. I found that really interesting.
That is interesting. I never thought of falsetto as being something where you lose a little bit of the
You
personality.
do lose a little bit of it. Obviously, the incredible singers like Sylvester and, Barry Gibb
Yeah.
are able to keep. Curtis Mayfield is another one. You can tell when it's them, but when it was me or you, maybe, no shade to us. But so falsetto is really hard to master. And anyway, Prince, very distinctive falsetto.
And I love the story about how Janelle and Prince got connected. She said one night after a show, she gets a phone call and the voice on the other end is like, "Hello, this is Prince. I'm sorry I couldn't make it your show." First off, this is
Wow.
the same thing that happened with Outkast. Andre 3000 says that he gets a phone call
Right.
after they're reuniting at Coachella, and it's like Prince, and he's just like, "Hey, this is what I would have done differently," or whatever. So Prince was just making calls,
Yeah.
man.
We got on the phone. First thing he said was, "You know what your problem is? You don't understand how big you are." He was like, "This artist and that artist, they wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for y'all."
I just can't imagine the scenario where you receive a call like that and you're not like, screw you. This is it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
There's no way that you would immediately just go with it. But
Totally. I mean, that's exactly
Right?
how Janelle
Being
was. She was like,
incredulous.
no, this has got to be some kind of
Nuh-uh.
a joke. But
Right.
no, it was really Prince.
Wow.
He told her he loved her voice and how she was taking control of her career. And then he invited her and her band to come over that night for a jam session. I mean, this is her
that's
hero.
quite the cosign.
This
Incredible.
is like Kimmel meeting Letterman or,
Right.
Kendrick meeting Tupac. I can't imagine how excited she was.
Insane.
I mean, who would be your crazy phone call? You'd be like, no, this is obviously
I mean, it's just popped in my head, but if Barack Obama called me, I'd be like, I could kind of see it
I
happening.
like that it has nothing to do with music.
I
It's
can
just
I
like-
can kind of be like, oh, it makes sense that he'd be calling me. Sure.
Unless
of
Barack
course.
wanted to make a song with you. Now, that would really be interesting.
And what would it sound like if Barack Obama was calling me, Diallo? What do you think that might sound like?
He'd be like, Michelle?
He'd call me Michelle.
And you'd be like, no, this is luxury. You'd be like, oh, yeah, love the podcast. Which, by the way, also sounds like Jimmy Jam calling you. We always joke that Jimmy Jam sounds like Barack Obama talking about Janet Jackson.
I am going to ask you the same question, but let's pretend it's the only voice that I'm capable of doing. Let's pretend it's Ronald Reagan calling you. Well, that's the only voice I can do.
I'd be like, Ronnie, you were wrong about a lot.
Well, I can just do one word of one voice. That's it.
That's pretty solid.
Thank you. But who would be your version of that crazy phone call?
You know what? I'm gonna say Pharrell. That would
okay.
be a real. And by the way,
That feels doable too.
I've spoken to Pharrell.
That feels not impossible. Oh, you've already talked to him?
He came
But
on.
he's still
he
your
came
dream.
on Fallon one time, and he was pitching us some jokes that were honestly, they were never going to happen because we were on NBC.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of swearing that would have
Okay.
gone into that comedy, and I don't think
Yeah.
you could even bleep a lot of it. But so I did talk to him that one time. But if he called me and was like, hey, let's make some music, like then I'd be like, oh man,
Dude,
hell yeah, dude.
from your lips to Pharrell's ears
to
on high
500,000 listeners
on the Mount Rushmore of amazingness.
Give me Pharrell on the phone.
It was a tragic loss, as we've talked many times about on the show. When Prince died, we all felt it, but Janelle felt it particularly as he was her mentor. And apparently, Prince contributed to the song we're talking about today. Now, here's the thing. The way in which he contributed is unclear. And as we listen to the stems a little bit later, let's double down on our listening ears into the micro of it all to see if we can figure out what feels particularly Prince. I have a hypothesis or two.
Okay.
But across all the research and across all the quotes, we've had very broad statements about his involvement. For example, it's been said that he made some music and equipment recommendations, quote unquote.
Okay.
Apparently, for example, Gary Newman was one of the musical references that he
That's
cited.
so interesting. Like the Venn diagram of like Prince fans and Gary Newman fans, by no means like not a strong Venn diagram,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
to speak. But like I don't ever think of like someone like Gary as being on Prince's radar that
Right.
much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think when we listen to the stems, there's something that jumped out to me where I was like, oh, I think this might be it. But that'll be a fun part of this speculation once we get there.
Do we know which song by Gary Newman, or is it possibly just like that sort of like Cars era Gary Newman?
So at this point, I've told you nearly everything that was specific in
Yeah.
the research that was done to find what did Prince do and where did he do
so
it?
we're going to become music investigators and try
Absolutely.
and sniff out where the Newman hits the Rogers.
We are getting forensic in the musicology on this one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The closest to specific that we were able to find in all of our research was longtime Janelle collaborator Chuck Lightning, who is quoted as saying, quote, when Prince heard this particular direction, meaning this album being kind of more 80s and being a little bit more sort of funk and digital 80s,
Yeah.
he said, when Prince heard this particular direction, he was like, quote, that's what y'all, quote within quotes, I should say, that's what y'all need to be doing. He picked out that sound as what we were resonating with him.
Oh, I love that.
So that is the most direct we've gotten as far as when we get into the stems, to be listening for. But
Yeah.
I've got a couple ideas. I think you will too.
Yeah, I mean, like, let me just say, you can definitely hear Prince's influence all over Dirty Computer. The last song on the album is called Americans, and it feels very Prince-coded to me. Tell me what you think this sounds like. Here's Americans.
Uncle Sam kissed a man. Jim Crow Jesus rose again.
I like my woman in the kitchen.
Wonderful how we have just a classic evocation combination. Like, I love it when this a small similarity
Yeah.
is
Here I say the similarity is the
evocative.
BPM, right?
It's the BPM and the beat.
Yeah.
The snare,
It's
it's
the
like
drums.
192-ish or something. Boom, ka-dum, ka-da-dun-dun. And so between that beat
Yeah.
at that BPM,
Yeah.
and then there's this one moment where you hear dun-dun, like the notes go dun-dun. I'm like,
Yes.
Let's Go Crazy by Prince
Yes.
happened to be conjured in my mind in that moment
But also, I'd
from these
point out-
sounds and the BPM.
Oh, I agree. But I'd also even point out that even her dry delivery
Yeah.
of that
Oh, great
monologue
point.
sounds
Yeah.
a little bit like
Yeah.
his prayer, if you
Yeah.
will, at the beginning of Let's Go Crazy.
And there are one or two little additional Lindrum sounding sounds,
Yeah,
like the
Lindrum.
famous knocking sound that he uses and
Yeah.
the clap, just little
that
syncopated
knock
parts.
is so distinct. I feel like
It's
he
so
owns that
distinct.
knock.
He owns that knock, especially when he puts it through a flange.
Yeah.
I really love how these little teeny pieces,
Yeah.
and that's 1% of the sonic picture. 99% is a completely new composition,
Yeah.
but this tiny little slice of it evokes that Prince-ness, which I love. It's a nice little homage.
I love it. Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break, but we're going to unravel more Monet mysteries when we get back. We're going to find out which Prince song Janelle took inspiration from, in particular, for her song, Make Me Feel, when we get back.
I have a confession to make. I do not know every single account where money lives.
I'm the
I'm
same
a
way.
little bit worried. There's like a savings passbook from the 80s somewhere with actual cash that maybe has
Oh,
been
man.
growing at a rapid rate. I don't know
You
what.
might be super loaded.
I could be
More
super
so.
loaded. Like literally, like I signed up for some crypto stuff when that was a thing, and like I regret it, but like there might be money in it. It might be worth a lot.
So what's the answer, my friend?
You can feel organized and confident in your finances with Monarch Money,
Ah.
an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean interface on your laptop or phone. All of your accounts right in one place. You can't miss it. It's a
I
snapshot.
love that.
Yeah.
And right now, just for our listeners, Monarch is offering 50% off your first year.
But since joining Monarch, I now have a handle and a grip on my finances. I
Oh,
know
nice.
my net worth now. I know my value to society, financially speaking, I should say. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. So if you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you.
Monarch does the heavy lifting. Link all your accounts in minutes and get clear data visuals, smart categorization of your spending, and real control over your money.
We promise you will never need to touch a spreadsheet ever again.
Don't leave money on the table. When you're making good money, it's easy to get complacent.
You don't need to track every dollar, but ignoring your finances entirely can cost you.
If you're not on top of your money, you could be missing chances to save more, invest smarter, or hit your financial goals faster.
Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks.
Use code ONESONG at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code ONESONG. You know, it's always exciting when the holidays are approaching, but this year we're staying in town, which means that family and friends are coming to us, which means we're hosting. Wish us luck. I mean, right now I'm thinking about all kinds of things. Does our serveware need a refresh? Does that guest room need a new comforter? Or do people like that old comforter? I don't know. It's hard to say. As the holidays approach, get what you need to personalize your home with Wayfair. Thankfully, Wayfair has everything we need. Shop holiday decor for every room in the house, whether it's Christmas trees, wreaths, inflatables for the front yard, inflatables for the pool. Some of us live in warm weather. Wayfair is your one-stop shop. Refresh your guest room with bedding, linens, throw pillows, and accent chairs for way less. Make holiday hosting a breeze with quality cookware that will wow any guest. Yes, even you, snobby Uncle Paul. Again, our house is going to be filled with relatives, friends, brand new puppies. That puppy, not quite trained yet. I have to replace a lot of stuff before the guests start arriving. But that's what makes it easy to go to Wayfair because they've got styles for every home, no matter what your space or budget is. It definitely fits within our space and our taste to find everything that we need. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your home goals this holiday season with endless inspiration for every space and every budget. Free and easy delivery, even on the big stuff. No more huge delivery fees for furniture. Hey, bring in another couch. Get big stuff like sofas, dining tables, beds, desks, all kinds of stuff shipped free. Find your seasonal must-haves from furniture and holiday decor to appliances and cookware all in one convenient place. Hosting just got a lot easier. Co-hosting, not so much. Get organized, get refreshed, and get ready for the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's Wayfair, WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Welcome back to One Song Luxury. You discovered that one of Prince's songs is kind of the blueprint for Make Me Feel. Is that right?
That's right. I'm far from breaking the news that there are some similarities between Make Me Feel by Janelle Monáe and Kiss by Prince.
I don't know that I've ever thought of a
From
connection between the
1986.
two.
There are some comparisons that have already been noticed, I think. And when you play them side by side, one after the other, you're like, oh yeah, here's some similarities. But when you play them on top of each other, as I have done, as I've set up here in Ableton, the similarities become very clear and very interesting because they're all structural and vibey, I would say. And they absolutely fall into that area of evocation that we've been talking about for the last few episodes, as opposed to direct lifting, which from a copyright standpoint is when melody and lyrics get involved.
Yeah.
None of that is happening here, but the parallels are very interesting, and let's get into them. What I've done is I've set up the two songs in Ableton to match each other. In other words, I've pitched the Prince song down by 3 halftones so that it's in the same key. They're both in F sharp major now. And slightly reduced the BPM. They were already pretty close. They're both roughly in the 115, 112 BPM range. But that's it. What's interesting to me as I laid them out is it strikes me as being something I've done many times as a songwriter. I do something which I know from my songwriting community now of almost 2 decades is very common. You do something called writing sideways.
Yeah.
You take another song and you take elements of it that inspire you and you write sideways from it.
Yeah.
In this case, what I think Janelle and her team did, perhaps with Prince and definitely with his blessing, was to take Kiss's structure and write sideways from it. There's 2 elements of the structure. One is what happens when in the song. In other words, the intro, the verse, the chorus, the duration of each thing. But importantly, the parallel is that they're both 12-bar blues, which is really surprising because you just don't get a lot of 12-bar blues on pop radio in the last 30, 40 years. So here's Kiss pitched down just so you're used to it. Right? And now I'm going to layer Make Me Feel. The verse starts here.
Baby, don't make me spell it out for you.
they're both about to change to the 4. Janelle goes down. We're back to the 1. And that repeats again. Once we have that same cycle of going from the 1 chord to the 4 chord, and again, in Janelle's case, she has a moment where she goes to the 6. It's just a quick substitution. Basically, we'll get into it in a minute, this is a 12-bar blues, and I'll explain that in a second. But here's where we get to the change into the chorus. I will layer them first with Prince. Here's Janelle. Now we're going to the 5. We're going to the 4. And here's the tag.
You know what's crazy? There was first off, that was brilliant, my friend. Thank you for doing that. I think we can all see some amazing similarities there. There was a chord in there.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that, I guess it's her pre-chorus.
Okay.
And Prince's chorus.
Yeah.
That hit, it was the two songs merged into this amazing sound.
I think part of what you may be hearing is that the chord changes are happening identically and they're mapping to each other, but they're also both mapping to hundreds of years of history in what's known as the 12-bar blues, one of the earliest kind of formats and structures for blues music.
Tell us what that is.
Sure, I'll do a quick demonstration. Not only have you heard this thousands of times, if not millions of times, what's really interesting to me is that you don't tend to hear it on pop radio. It really isn't a very common set of modern chord changes. And numerically speaking, you usually get 8-bar phrases, but this is a 12-bar blues. So I'll just quickly show you what that means. I was also mentioning as we were going along the numbers 1, 4, 5. Here's what that means. The 1 is the root chord. Right, and then you're going to go to the 4. And then you're going to go back to the 1. And now where does your ear want to go? Probably the 5, which is the E. And now you want to go down to the 4, the D, down to the 1, right? And then you want to do a little turnaround, right, or something. If you count that, I did that really quickly, but that's a 12-bar blues because the first 8 bars were the 1, 4, 1, 4. And then the last 4 was that turnaround section. That is exactly what's happening in both of these songs.
Wow.
There are tiny little moments.
That doesn't happen that often in, let's call it post-60s radio.
Yeah, you start to hear it less unless it's intending to evoke an earlier era, because it's so 50s sounding.
Something out of Sinners or something.
Because it's so 20s sounding, because it's just old blues music sounding. Maybe even pre-recorded era it kind of evokes to my ears. But certainly when Prince did it on Kiss in 1986, it was like, oh wow, we're hearing a 12-bar blues. And then we had 30 years of not that many other 12-bar blues on Top 40 radio.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into the stems. Yes, I think percussion-wise, I hear a lot of similarities. But what's going on with the drums on Make Me Feel? There are probably several drum tracks on this song.
Yeah, there's about 7 percussion and drum tracks on this one,
Now I feel good.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a very sparse track, but it's mostly drums and vocals.
Yeah.
So let's listen to the drums one layer at a time, starting with kind of the kick drum, so to speak, but it's got more going on. And I'll layer some of these mouth sounds. Do you hear that kind of on 2 and 4? We have what sounds like, like a click, click.
And totally.
Those are happening on the 2 and 4. And it sounds like there's a clap also layered on the 4.
Is that somebody's mouth or is that something on the drum?
So here's one thing we need to step back for a second. The credits on this record are a little bit obtuse and there weren't a lot of explanatory interviews that we could locate. What we do know is that Matt Mann and Robin are the producers and programmers on the song. Their names are all over. Matt Mann and Robin, that's right. That's Matthias Per Larsen and Robin Lennart Fredriksson. These are members of the Swedish, not House Mafia, but the Swedish Songwriting Excellence Mafia.
Yeah.
They're part of the
preferred mafia.
Right. They're part of the Wolf Cousins team. We talked about them on the Weekend episode. Go back and listen to that.
Totally.
But they have cuts with Imagine Dragons and Charlie and Dua and Selena, Brittany and Gwen.
Yeah.
That's right. So they are credited on this record with bass, drums, guitar, percussion, and synths. And their names are the only names that appear in the credits aside from in the vocals. So not sure who did what in terms of as we're breaking it down.
They keep it a little cryptic.
They're keeping it a little cryptic, yeah. But these are all sounds that you can find like, on Splice or sample CDs or in, Triton workstations. So they're out there. But they also, I don't know, I feel like they would have been fun to make the mouth sounds with your mouth. So maybe they did that. So that's the main beat for the first minute or so. And then in the turnaround, AKA that pre-chorus, we get some more sounds introduced. One of them, I think you'll notice right away, is this impact. Which to me, when I heard that in the mix,
in there?
I know. I'll play it for you in the mix now. Here's the whole beat, at least.
How did I miss that?
It's interesting. It's
Can we hear the studio version of the song? I just want to be listening out just for that. Because So I think it's because there's an organ happening there.
There's like a big synth bass coloring a lot of that low end.
Now it's more believable that I didn't hear that.
It's serving a similar function. Yeah, it's exactly. Well, that kind of sound is called an impact. Like if you're ever looking for a sound like that to put into your song, just go on Splice and search for impact. He loves this sound.
Sounds like the beginning of a movie trailer.
I was literally going to say it. It is the sound that you hear in a movie trailer. It's the sound that you hear in a lot of EDM.
In a world.
It's a big drop sound. You'll hear that across a lot of EDM songs. And it's buried in the mix of this pop song just to give it that big contrast from that minimal, sparse first 8 bars that we were just listening to.
Yeah, totally.
And another thing that's in that section that gets introduced are these toms. And then there's another kick. And then if we add the mouth sounds back and the clap and the original toms and the original percussion. And that's the full beat happening there in that pre-chorus.
I'm noticing now that mouth is kind of doing a tick-tock. Yeah. Before I thought it was just doing talk, but it's actually doing tick-tock.
Yeah. There's a little bit of melody in there. Da, 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 da. Yeah. And then in the chorus, they introduce something very modern and very distinctive, which is an 808. It's a distinctively from Prince, famously with the Linn drum. That was his drum machine. There's an 808 that comes in. I'll play that for you. And provides a little bass line emphasis as well. Dun, dun. You can hear the chord changes in there. Dun, 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 boom.
Give me and my friends credit. Even all the way back in elementary school, we used to call bass like that tonal bass.
It is tonal bass.
It was tonal bass. I don't know how we picked
pitch.
up on that so early, but we always loved the sound of it. And then obviously if you put like a little bit of like organ bass underneath that, you get like that warm fuzzy bass that you hear in your car. I'm reminded of the song Nemesis, Munchies for Your Bass.
'Cause I've got the munchies for your bass.
What year is this song?
That is 1991.
And so Ice-T coded like,
Let's talk about the bass because, obviously we've talked a lot about Kiss and Kiss famously has no bass part.
Exactly, right?
So maybe we get some insight into what the bass might have been like in an alternate universe where Kiss has bass.
Maybe Prince was trying to right a historical wrong by his contribution.
Totally.
Maybe this is his playing the bass on this song. That'd be funny.
What's going on with the bass on this one?
Let's listen. Wah, wah. That is the bass line.
That's the bass. So is that being played on a keyboard?
That to my ears sounds like a synth patch of some kind. It could be a couple of them layered. Might be one is just doing those downbeats and maybe one is an octave up with the wah sound.
What's funny is, I remember when Kiss came out and, he had been so sort of like glam rock and R&B up till that point. I remember my first impression of Kiss was like, there seems to be sort of a stepping away from the Purple Rain Prince with Kiss. It just sounded drastically different. Drastically different direction. And to that point, this sounds sort of like a wobbly, funky bass.
Yeah.
For the lack of a better
term. Great words for it. Wobbly and funky, yeah.
It's wobbly, it's funky. And in that sense, this might have been like sort of more of Prince's turn to funk. The same way that Kiss is more of his turn to funk. This is her attempt to do something sort of funkish.
Yeah. That could be it. That could be it. Yeah.
Maybe we'll ask her one day. Come on the show, Janelle.
Come on, Janelle. We love you.
Come on, Janelle. You mentioned that bass was probably played on a synth. What else is going on in Synthland?
In Synthland, we have that big moment where the impact is happening in the turnaround, right? To the 5 and the 4 and then the 6. Here that is on the bass. Lots of sound about to appear.
Yeah.
get ready for it.
I like that.
Very dramatic.
Dude,
There's
it's the 1980s. You've already been fired from the force for playing by your own rules, and now you're driving down one of those like soaked alleyways.
Right. It
In
is
your Pontiac, about to take on the drug dealers yourself.
absolutely. It's very synthwave
It's
sounding.
very synth.
Yeah, very synthwave.
None of these things exist in a vacuum. Earlier in this same decade of the 2010s,
Yeah,
all that synthwave stuff is underground, but it's influencing what's going on at the pop.
I think so.
Up in the higher echelons of pop.
Yeah.
And that feels so synthy. Can I just say there's something warm and nostalgic about just like a dark synthesizer.
Yeah.
You know, playing that kind of stuff.
You're right. It is simultaneously like spooky scary because it's big and sounding, but it's like kind of warm. It warms the cockles of your heart from a
Totally.
nostalgic standpoint.
I feel like that's what they went for with the opening titles of Stranger Things, as well as a couple other like very
interesting. Right.
it's just that very dark
Yeah,
1983 John Carpenter unreleased
right.
film. Yeah.
right. That's a spooky arpeggio.
Spooky arpeggio. Yeah, that swell sounds really Prince also, I should say.
Well, if you think that sounds Prince, wait till you hear what happens in the next layer when we get into the synths themselves.
Okay.
And these are super sparse. They're very Prince. They're very funky. They're very 80s. And they come and go. So if you blink, you'll miss it. Blink ear-wise. Is there a word for blinking with your ears? I do find on this show, I listen back and I'm like, I'm talking about something sonic, but I use like visual language for it. Anyway, don't blink because here comes the synth stab and then I'll give you the context. So that's happening just periodically every 2 bars or so. And I'll give it to you in the context with the bass. So it would be like this. Now that to me is a strong candidate for Prince.
Absolutely.
That's a strong
That's not even
candidate.
just Prince. That's like everybody. That's the family.
That's Jimmy Jam. That's the
That's-
time.
Yeah, that's more Stay in the Time. Like you can hear a lot of Prince in that. Just that stab. Isn't
That's
that weird how you can
Minneapolis.
own that stab.
Minneapolis in one stab.
Yeah.
Well, they own it in our hearts because it makes us both think of Minneapolis 1985, right?
Don't get stabbed in Minneapolis.
No, you don't want to do
You don't
that.
wanna get that.
And
That sounds great.
here's another very Princey moment, and this is again very short, but there's a little swell. I'll play it isolated and then show you where it happened.
Yeah.
Very minimal, like
What note is
efficient.
that? What note is that? Yeah, that last note. I almost feel like Prince owns that note. Isn't that weird?
It's very, very much what an Oberheim, OB, like XA, like there's the type of synth Prince famously played was an Oberheim.
Mhm.
And there are certain patches that when you bought that instrument, you got.
Got him.
This sounds a bit like one of those kind of famous Oberheim patches.
I also think that
and
last
the wobbliness of it
that-
would have been the modulation. Yeah.
note,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is also the first note of because we were talking about Let's Go
okay.
Crazy earlier, and so
I
I
see.
think that's why that note is like
Let's Go Crazy is also an F sharp major.
There we go.
Interesting. Hadn't thought about that connection. They're both in the same key.
There you go.
Which, by the way, is interesting because I don't have perfect pitch. So, like, there are people like Charlie Puth goes around and he's like, "Oh, that's the same note, literally the same note."
Yeah.
I live my life more relative pitch wise
Mhm.
because you can kind of change the key of any song as we just did with Prince's Kiss, and they can match and they quote unquote do the same thing. But to quote Spinal Tap, D minor is the saddest key. There are people for whom different notes and different keys evoke very, very specific
Yeah.
colors and emotions. I just personally don't have that gene.
Mm.
But you nailed it. It is the same. They're both in F sharp.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. The synth gets a little playful later on in sort of the solo section. That's after the second chorus. I'll play it for you. Are you hearing what I'm hearing?
I definitely am.
I think that might be the Gary Newman, right?
That sounds so Pleasure Principle
Yes.
era Gary Newman. It has cars.
Yeah.
Here in my car, I feel safest of all. I can lock on my doors. It's the only way to live in cars.
Our Friends Electric,
Yeah, yeah.
which is one of my favorite songs of all time.
Down in the park.
Also, film. I
Okay.
don't like the film. I don't like the film.
We fucking love Gary
Take it
Newman.
all back. Paint it all black. That's just an outstanding album.
Now we have to do Gary Newman like in the next couple weeks. And listen, I just have to say this one line because we are in this sort of forensic. Let's not forget we're in forensic mode
Oh,
here.
yeah, we fell off the case.
According to Prince's DJ, Lenka Paris, Prince contributed to the song, and she wrote in a, quote, subsequently deleted Facebook post. Prince had played her the synth line before his passing, describing it as, quote, so futuristic and good, Paris said. Last night, I heard Janelle Monáe's new song. As soon as the synth came in, I went, oh, damn, that's it. He gave that to her. So that's a quote from Prince's DJ. For what it's worth, since deleted. Since deleted. Maybe there's some significance to the deletion.
The guitar, man. I feel like there's some fun guitar stuff on here.
Hella fun guitar stuff. Let's listen. Ooh, so tight. The word tight springs to mind. And sharp.
Yeah.
Tight
Yeah,
and sharp.
and I dig it.
It can
It's
poke you.
pointed.
It can poke you with your elbow. With
You're saying poke, I'm saying pointed, but we're saying
pointy.
the same thing.
It's pointy
Yeah.
and poke. It's happening in a very tiny moment. It's syncopated, and it is a funk trope. These are classic,
It's funk. I mean, like,
classic
again,
funk
I think
guitar
that,
line.
You know, in some ways, Prince and his wonderful Lindrum sort of like kills the 70s funk in to a large degree
Yeah.
in black music in the early 80s. And sort of its peak is sort of like the glam rock and R&B of Purple Rain. And then he surprises us by coming back to a much funkier sound
Mhm.
with the next album.
Right.
You know, and the single, you know, Kiss, which is like his biggest song technically of
Yeah.
all time. What else is going on in the guitar here? So we heard a little bit of funky trope.
We heard a little funky trope. There's this really cool moment that I'll play for you, and then we'll talk about it. At the end,
I mean, I think we all went a little crazy just now. I think we all.
this is a
At first, it
classic.
sounded like somebody like scraping your car with a key.
You're nailing it. It's the scraping of a guitar,
Yeah.
a distorted guitar with a pick.
Yeah.
When you scrape down the strings,
Uh-huh.
it's a metal trope. We have two tropes in a row from two different genres.
Yeah,
we had the
they don't
funk.
usually meet.
They don't
a
usually
whole
meet
lot,
like that.
yeah.
We had the guitar funk trope into the metal kind of the beginning of Crazy Train. Randy Rhoads does that, you know? So anyway,
That's cool.
It's so cool that we
That's
have
cool.
that
And
in there.
also, Prince, you know, such a masterful guitarist. It would be wrong to do anything that, you know, gets all the Prince talk and
Yeah.
doesn't have something to sort of show off on the guitar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, that shit goes crazy in that solo section I was mentioning before with
Yeah.
the solo melody. On top of the solo melody, there's this crazy guitar, but also it's digital, it's choppy sounding.
Yeah.
I'll play it for you and then add stuff in the mix so you know where we are. I'll bring in the drums. So that's mirroring the 16th notes on the toms, the Herbie Hancock
Yeah.
did the rocket did.
Yeah.
But it's very digital. You can tell that somebody
Yeah,
took
that's
a little.
not a hand. That's not a human doing
It was performed, and then they took that recording and they chopped it
chopped it.
so that it's a perfectly digital sounding kind of cut.
But I think more than anything you've played musically today,
yeah.
that to me sounds of Kiss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's so kissy. Like
Well, and it's happening lining up with guitar solo in this moment in Kiss by Prince. This is happening. Here, I'll play them together. Here we go. I love the mapping.
I mean, if somebody hasn't already, I can. That is the sound of 1,000 laptops firing up.
Mashing
to do
that one up.
Mash
Yeah,
up. Right
that's a
now.
good one. Yeah.
Well, listen, Janelle Monáe. We said earlier, like she has so many different singing styles, and she's good at all of them. I'm gonna just say that. I think she's got a great voice. So I do want to hear some isolated vocals, and maybe just start us off with the first verse.
Baby, don't make me spell it out for you. All of the feelings that I got for you can't be explained, but I can try for you. Yeah, baby, don't make me spell it out for you.
One thing I appreciate about these lyrics is that in some ways, like they can kind of apply to anyone
Yeah,
singing
they're
about
universal.
someone else. Yeah,
Sure.
they're very universal. And I don't think that I guess if you want to call that vagueness, I don't think that hurts this song at all. In fact, if anything, it just allows everybody to sing it.
I think it's really interesting to think about how ambiguity works in art. It's something that in pop music doesn't tend to work. Pop music tends to be about directness.
Right.
And maybe that's part of what this equation is today with this episode. She made a pop song, but there's a lot of ambiguity in it, but it still works as a pop song.
Yeah.
But in 2018, when it came out, she hadn't come out yet as non-binary. She was still obviously figuring out how to tell that part of herself to the world. And this film and this record and this song are all part of that journey. And in 2022, she came out as non-binary, or as she likes to put it, coming in. And this great quote from her, you're bringing people into who you are. You're allowing them a unique opportunity to further understand how you see yourself. I really love that. I love that she's pushing back on the coming out thing as though it's about other people. It's not about other people. It's about you. It's about how you express yourself and how comfortable you are in the world. And just to finish her thought on this, she goes on to say, for me, it's not this big declarative statement. This is who I am. I don't think anyone should feel obligated to talk about their sexuality.
Yeah, and I think that I really like the sentiment behind that statement. And her voice is so good. And like, you know, finding like there are little choices in there that I really like. Like I like how she kind of goes down on, don't make me, you know, spell it out for you.
Totally.
You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
But I will say it hurt a little to stop the vocals because she was about to get into the pre-chorus. Let's hear the pre-chorus.
So this is where the magic happens for me. I will say when I first heard this song, this is what jumped out of the radio.
This is the best part of the song, Fight Me.
This is the best part of the song, Fight Me. This is so exciting.
Yeah.
I'm going to play it and then we'll talk about it.
It's like I'm powerful with a little bit of tender and emotional sexual bender. Mess me up, yeah, but no one does it better.
So in that moment that we have this incredible, it's chromatic, but it's more than that. Ba, 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 ba. What's weird about that, and I spent a lot of time on this. What's going on there?
The descending that she does?
Let's talk about that descending slide right there. Because we're hearing 5 pitches, technically. She's hitting 5 notes, but it's taking place in the span of what's actually 4 notes on the piano keyboard. In other words, she's dropping, here, I'll play it for you. So when she sings, "Little bit of tender," so that she does that 4 times in this pre-chorus, those 5 notes. It's F sharp to E flat, but there's only 4 notes in between there. So F sharp, and she's singing "Little bit of tender." In other words, there's a blue note in there, but it's kind of in between the notes. It's like a microtone. In other non-diatonic 12-tone systems globally, you'll go in between the notes. In India, there's like a microtonal system that you're used to hearing. Like it's frequently used. But in our pop music canon, we have blue notes for sure. And this is definitely in that family. But to my ear, what makes this really unique is that usually the blue notes really emphasize like no, no, no. And it kind of bends back down again.
Yeah.
In this case, she's just taking what are only 4 notes and making 5 out of them. It's really cool. So again, let me hear. If I slow it down halfway. Look at this. There's, in this note, she's singing 2. Let me try to play it at the same time.
On your keyboard, it sounds like the same note twice.
Yeah.
But in actuality.
Listen really carefully. You'll hear the first 3 map to what I play, and then it gets a little strange. And then the last note maps to it. Let's try this together. That tender is really subtly just not an E.
Yeah.
It's just not an E.
So for those of you maybe listening and not watching what he's doing on this, he's hitting that E twice. But we're saying that in actuality, in execution in this song, it's not that same
if you
note.
Wanted
it's
to
a little
play,
half note in between
if
the
you
E.
wanted to, that's exactly right. It's a quarter tone. And if you wanted to play this melody on a piano, you cannot. Because this is the closest you can get on a piano.
Which is not what we hear.
That's right. So you can do it on a guitar. You can bend it. The vocal can do it. You can do it on a fretless bass or any instrument that, unlike a piano, doesn't have the notes just demarcated. In fact, even on a keyboard, if you're Herbie Hancock, you can use the bend wheel. But what's really interesting—
you couldn't do it on a harpsichord. That you cannot do.
You can't do it on a harpsichord or a piano.
I love that. Thanks for breaking that down for us.
You want to hear the chorus?
That's just the way you make me feel. So good, so good, so fucking real. That's just the way you make me feel.
It's such a sexy, positive song.
Yeah.
Like usually like there's like a little tinge of like puritanical judgment going on in some of our best sexy songs. But there's like a sexy song where it's like, no, I feel really good about this.
Yeah. And it's sexily delivered too because she's not belting it. It's sort of more of a conversational voice.
She's up in your ear.
Yeah, she's in your ear with a conversational.
Absolutely. Love it.
Register.
There's some whispering going on in this song. Can you play us a little bit of that?
Yeah. While she's singing that, this is going on in the background as a call and response, and then I'll put them together.
That's just the way you make me feel.
And you can hear herself.
That's just the way you So good, so good, so fucking real. That's just the way you make me feel.
You can hear the bleed from her headphones as she was
I
singing.
know, I
in the
love
booth.
that.
Yeah.
It's like she's singing to herself.
Yeah. Well, by the way, speaking of singing to herself, there is a credit for one other artist on the song. She's one of the songwriters credited, and that is superstar songwriter Julia Michaels, who did Justin Bieber's Sorry and Selena Gomez's Good For You. She had her own hit song, Issues, a number of years back.
Sure.
I believe she's credited as a backing vocalist. So somewhere in the BGVs, Julia Michaels is also in there.
Well, since you bring up songwriting, can you tell us anything about the splits on this song?
Yeah. So another mystery in the song, where is Prince in all this? Well, we found some places we think he might have contributed, but we may never know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
He's certainly not credited as a songwriter.
He doesn't get a split.
But interestingly, there was some disparities in the credits that I found in the world. If you buy the record, if you look on Wikipedia, if you look on a bunch of sources, you'll see Janelle's name is included as a songwriter. However, I went and I triple checked this. She's not in the official ASCAP or BMI as a songwriter. She's not in MLC. She's not in PRS. The 4 credited songwriters, if you want to use this song in your movie and you got to send checks somewhere, they're going to be going.
Matt Mann and Robin.
They're going to Matt Mann and Robin. They're going to Julia Michaels from the BGVs. And they're going to superstar songwriter Justin Tranter.
Okay.
And those 4 are an equal split 4 ways. But Janelle herself, in spite of being in the liner notes, if you buy the record, or Wikipedia, which is a less credible source anyway, is not considered a songwriter.
A part of me did wonder. I was like, what was the conversation like when the producers of Love Island USA called up Janelle Monáe and were like, hey, we want to use your song.
She's like, I got no say in the matter.
But she gets some money. I mean, she gets the performance royalty.
She'll get performance royalties. When she plays live, she sings the song and gets paid. There are other avenues, and she got the recording, the masters, some kind of advance of some sort. Who knows? There's lots of ways musicians make money, but she isn't making money from mechanicals or any publishing related stuff.
So you can look at those shots of Ariana Madix walking out to this song and know that somewhere Janelle Monáe is okay.
But just to be clear, this is a mystery to me. It seems strange that there would be such a huge discrepancy. So maybe something's in the middle of behind the scenes being worked out, and hopefully she will be cut into what seems like a very personal song to her.
This is not the Love Island scandal you need to be worried about.
Okay, good. Thank you for preparing me for that.
After listening to the song, I really feel good about Makes Me Feel. And Janelle herself has said, quote, it's a celebratory song. I hope that comes across, that people feel more free no matter where they are in their lives, that they feel celebrated. And I think you can truly say that. That's how Make Me Feel makes me feel. How does it make you feel, my friend?
Listen, this song makes me feel mighty real. It's part of that long legacy and lineage of sexy songs with ambiguity and sort of brimming with interesting choices and selections, musically and sonically, as we've just been listening to in the stems. For me personally, that moment that we lingered on in the pre-chorus with the 5 notes that fit into 4 with the microtone and everything going on there, to me was so unique and is to me like the legacy of the song in my brain. Yeah. When I walk around the world, I think of that moment all the time. Yeah. Because it's just so unique and special and cool.
And it's playful. Yeah, right?
Playful,
it feels playful.
And strange, and unusual. It's ambiguous.
In many ways, the legacy of this song and Janelle Monáe is still unfolding. How do you see her continuing to evolve? Can it be predicted at all? And what do you want to see more from her?
I love that Janelle Monáe's artistry exists in the same world where we have big pop stars and indie underground, and she's sort of doing what she wants to do. It's her vision, it's her voice, and she's kind of like Prince and Bowie before her, like a little creative magpie grabbing bits and pieces of what interests her and what's relevant to her and what's true to her and her authentic voice. And she's growing as a person in real time in front of us, which is so inspiring. I love that we get to witness her journey as an artist. And as maybe bordering on cliche as that sounds, I can't think of another artist for whom it's as authentic looking as this. It's not just who are they dating or what are they wearing? It's who is this person?
Exactly. I like that a lot too. And I'll tell you, her first album came out 15 years ago. And since then, I feel like she's constantly sort of reinvented herself. And she's paved the way for a whole new generation of artists who are unapologetically themselves. But I do feel like in many ways, she's just getting started. And like you said, like Bowie and like Prince, I see her continuing to evolve creatively in ways that will continue to surprise us. I don't think we can predict where she goes from here, but I can guarantee you we'll all be listening in. I think we can actually close this episode with something that Janelle said. She says, quote, there's freedom in dancing, there's freedom in moving, there's freedom in just celebrating your authentic self. And that's what Make Me Feel is whatever I want to do right now is what I'm going to do. And I feel empowered while doing it. We hope she continues to sing about it.
All right, One Song Nation, we've got a new segment we're calling One Genre. This is where Diallo and I break down a subgenre and share a record we think is essential listening.
That's right. And today we are talking about Deep House. Now, there are a couple of subgenres within the dance music genre that claim the title Deep House. I think it's because nobody wants to admit they listen to Shallow House.
No, God, nobody wants that.
Just doesn't sound cool.
Mm-mm.
But to be clear, we are talking about the jazz and funk and soulful influenced house music that you hear in the music of Blaze, Black Coffee, Osunlade, Mark Farina, Todd Terry, Masters at Work. That's what it's very influenced by the city of Chicago. It's like almost a direct line from the Marshall Jeffersons and the Frankie Knuckles all the way up into like the Maya Jane Coles, and even I would argue Kaytranada. So that is the genre we're talking about today. It's Deep House. So Luxury, what is your selection in the subgenre of Deep House?
Listen, I'm taking it back to the beginning of Deep House. I've got in my hands a copy of Fingers Incorporated.
Oh, yes.
This is their full-length record, Another Side, but it is Larry Heard, a.k.a. Mr. Fingers. And he was one of the first, right? You have Can You Feel It? The
Can
legendary.
You Feel It? Such a great song. I
Yep.
get chills every time. Like a DJ still mixes it in. It still has that effect on me to this day.
Absolutely. Mystery of Love. These are tunes that are
Mystery
just
of Love.
absolute dance floor classics for nearly 40 years, if you can believe it.
It's insane.
Yeah, and the great thing about this record, which is a recent release, or re-release, I should say, is that so many of these songs you had to get individually, like go
Yeah.
to Discogs and buy one 12-inch at a time. So, I was like, oh my God, I can get them all at once on this record.
And can I say I love that you've selected this because I think that a lot of people who like, Miguel Miggs and, Rufus Du Sol, they don't realize that there is a whole genre of music that harkens back to Larry Heard, to Mr. Fingers. Like, it's an important link between the dance music of today and the Chicago roots of the dance music.
I was going to say, it's arguably the beginnings of house music is this Deep House, what we now maybe call Deep House, since there have been so many splintered subgenres.
Totally.
And to my ears, what I hear in here is basically the things that make it Deep House, a couple of them at least. Definitely the soulful vocals, like you mentioned, but also I think the use of chords that are a little spicier. There's not just sevenths, but sometimes ninths and 11s and 13ths. This is stuff that comes from jazz.
Yeah.
So these chords that are a little bit more, to use the easiest word that pops to mind, they're complicated chords, which gives it a richness that feels deep. There's a deepness in the meaning that feels implied by the music.
I can't agree more. It should be pointed out that this is the type of house music that gave us sort of like that generation of like EDM pioneers, everybody from Daft Punk to Todd Edwards. If you talk to them, they'll tell you that this is the genre that they were trying to practice in when they sort of took over like the mainstream pop charts. But this is we're going deep.
Right. And
literally.
To be clear, Daft Punk is not, I would not call Daft Punk Deep House.
No,
they don't use those types of chords or vocals for that matter. They're a little bit different what they've branched off to do with French touch.
Again, I think if you look at what they were doing and what artists like Cassius were doing, especially in the French touch period, they were chasing a type of like almost like electronic R&B. And I just think that sometimes gets missed when you discuss these things with people who've only been to a couple of music festivals in the last few years.
It's coming out of the like legacy of disco music, and it's adding a lot of electronics or some of the earliest uses of 909s as a replacement for live drummers, just kind of out of practicality. But then also it sounded cool. And then those early tunes then inspired the next generations to start using the same sounds they heard that they liked. And again, with the Mr. Fingers and the Can You Feel It, these are some of the earliest tunes that established what we now take for granted as being the sound of house music.
And just to take it to a personal level, when I first got out to LA, there were a lot of places where you could go and hear Deep House like on the weekends. A lot of us, we would go to the wet party at the Roosevelt Hotel and places like that. Like there was a sound that was specific to Deep House. A lot of us would call it even jazzy house because they were sampling a lot of jazz artists. Like a perfect example is Armand Van Helden's classic Flowers, which samples Donald Byrd's Think Twice. So they were sampling a lot of the jazz fusion artists that we've talked about on the song. For my selection, I decided to run with Jazzanova, who's one of my favorite producers, an outfit out of Germany, who did a lot of really cool jazz influence, soul influence, Deep House. And one of my favorite songs by them is on this compilation of all their remixes from 1997 to 2000. It looks like a lot of vinyl, but they were very prolific in that period. They did a remix to MJ Cole's Sincere. Their remix to MJ Cole's Sincere, which is technically the Jazzanova Sincerely Yours remix. I know it's a long title. Thank you, Discogs. That remix to this day, like if I'm in the best mood, I get chills all over my body during the breakdown. It's one of the most fantastic breakdowns. We've talked on this show sometimes about people using silence as a weapon. And I think it's a perfect example because at some point, everything comes out except for this amazing organ sound. And by the time they bring everything back in, I'm telling you, if you're at the right party and the crowd knows their shit, it's an amazing song.
There's a real warmth and depth to this subgenre of dance music because I think of the use of those chords and, of course, the vocals. Whatever combination
so
from one
good.
tune to the next, you might get
Yeah.
some of one and some of the other. But I think part of what makes it lasting as well is the emotional connection that you resonate with. Of course, you can find that in techno music and anything really, but there's something special about the use of these warm, rich, deep chords,
Yeah.
which just taps into different colors, different emotions.
I can't agree more. So those are our one genre picks for Deep House. Let us know what you think of our picks in the comments.
And if you want to hear our selections, please check out the One Song playlist linked in our episode notes.
Thanks for listening to the show. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok. You can find me on Instagram at Diallo, Diallo, and on TikTok at Diallo Riddle.
And you can find me on Instagram at LUXXURY and on TikTok at LuxuryXX.
And you can follow our podcast on Instagram and TikTok. You can find us at One Song Podcast for exclusive content. You can also watch full episodes of One Song on YouTube and Spotify. Just search for One Song Podcast. We'd love it if you like and subscribe.
Also be sure to check out the One Song Spotify playlist for all the songs we discuss in our episodes. You can find the link in our episode description.
And if you made it this far, you're officially part of the One Song Nation. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Show us some love, give us 5 stars, leave a review, and send this episode to a fellow music nerd. It really helps keep the show going. All right, Luxury, help me in this thing.
I'm producer, DJ, songwriter, and musicologist Luxury.
And I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ, Diallo Riddle.
And this is One Song. We will see you next time.
This episode is produced by Melissa Duenas. Our video editor is Casey Simonson. Our associate producer is Jeremy Bimbo. Mixing by Michael Hardman and engineering by Eric Hicks. Production supervision by Razak Boykin and additional production support from Z Taylor. This show is executive produced by Kevin Hart, Mike Stein, Brian Smiley, Eric Eddings, Eric Weil, and Leslie Guam.